Were you guys thinking I ran out of ways to use squash? No, I haven't. We're making the ultimate comfort food for fall. It is a squash and kale lasagna. I know you're thinking kale, no thank you. The kale is more of a supplement, and it is just worked in with all the delicious flavors that to me are so fall. And what's fun about this, and I think totally different, it incorporates, for me, instead of just normal squash sauce, squash soup. And we will talk about that more in a minute. You can totally use like a canned squash pasta sauce too that you could buy. I love to use squash soup that I happen to have in the fridge because it makes a lot. So to start, we're gonna brown some sausage. I took some sausage out of the casings just because when you want smaller pieces of just a ground sausage, you don't want that casing on it. It just isn't good. It's toothsome and it's not good. So if you can find just ground sausage, you can use that too. So I just took it out of the casing. We're gonna take it over, put it right into a somewhat warm skillet. Usually sausage should have enough fat that you don't really need to add too much. I'm adding just a little bit of olive oil. That's just gonna ensure that you kind of do get some of that non-stick quality, but also just a little bit more to help it start cooking. And then this could be the gross part. I think it's easier just to use your hand, just somewhat kind of break up some of that sausage as it's coming out. You could try to do it all with a spatula, but it's just easier to do it with your hand as you're putting it in. Let's be honest. I'm gonna put all the sausage in there and then we're gonna start cooking it. I'm letting my sausage just cook, render out some of that fat, get brown on it, get cooked through, and then while that's going, I'm just gonna start chopping my onion. We're just really layering flavors here, and that's what's fun about lasagna. It's all about the layers, literally, but also the layers of flavor that we're adding into it. And that's what I love, is that you can switch it up like I'm doing for fall. This actually came from my sister, who she is amazing. She's 3 kids, and she is always finding ways to use some of her leftovers or just different ways to kind of switch it up, because when you make that many meals a week, which is a lot of meals, you have to find different ways to use it. And she, like me, loves to use things with the fall. And so she was really the inspiration for this. She was telling me once kind of about a lasagna she kind of was making or trying, and I was like, okay, I'm taking that. So this kudos to her, because this kind of comes from her. So that's all cut up. We'll throw that in there when the rest of the sausage is browned. Every so often, I do just kind of stir the sausage around, make sure that it's browning evenly, getting cooked through. I love when you get those crusty bits on the sausage. That's kind of my favorite. And every so often, if you're like me and use the cased sausage with the casings removed, just sit here and kind of chop it up a little bit so it gets in a little bit smaller pieces. That just also helps it cook easier, but also when it's into the lasagna, you don't want big, massive pieces of sausage. If you're wondering why I'm using sausage, I think sausage is one of those things that just goes really well with squash. Sausage and squash just go well together. It has those flavors, and I love that. You can totally leave the sausage out. Make it vegetarian. I love recipes that can be versatile. I don't always eat a ton of meat, sometimes I do, so it's nice to have different options in there. So that's about browned. So now I'm gonna add my onion. It's one of those things where if you put the onion in right away, it adds a lot of moisture because moisture cooks out of the onion, and then that causes too much liquid to be in there to cook the sausage. That's the last of my onion. And I'm just gonna stir that in so it can start sauteing. We're not really looking for a lot of color here, we're just looking for it to soften. And I do at this point, not a lot, but I add just a little bit of salt. Sausage is usually salted pretty heavily, so you don't need too much. But I do think it's important to layer kind of that seasoning as you go and put a little bit of salt and pepper once you add that onion and help it cook out. So while this is sauteing over here, I'm always gonna put just a sprig of thyme. You don't have to be too concerned with how much because it's really just flavoring it, giving the essence of it, and some rosemary. We're gonna pull this out after it's cooked for a while. So I just like to put it in there. I think it's annoying, and please, I hope you agree. No, you have to, because who likes to do this? I don't like stripping herbs. And I know there's easy ways. You can get those herb strippers. That's another gadget. I don't want to get it. Instead, I like to throw a whole sprig in, let it cook. Some of the leaves are going to actually cook off. A lot of those oils and the flavors that are in the herbs are going to come out and go into the mixture. So that's the best way. While the herbs are really getting their essence in there, you don't like to overcook garlic. So I don't add it in the beginning. Garlic can burn really easily. When garlic is burned, what does it do? It gets bitter. So I'm taking a clove of garlic. I'm just cutting the end off. Making sure all of that is smashed off. This is from my garden. Garlic to me is the easiest thing to grow. I've done videos on it to show you. I love garlic. If you haven't grown garlic, you should totally start growing garlic. I think it's super easy. You get big, beautiful cloves. It gets better every year. That's what I love about garlic. You kind of create your own hybrid almost because you're sitting there making your garlic every year and it gets better and bigger and then you grow it from the year before. Guys, I can't sing enough praises. So we're gonna throw this in here and we're throwing it in when it's not gonna get as much cooking time because we don't want it to burn. So we have all those other components in there with the onion, so it's not gonna get too done. So I'm gonna throw it right in there, just stir it around, just to start getting the flavors going. Instantly, this couldn't smell better or more autumnal. You get the thyme, you get the rosemary, some garlic with that sausage. Guys, it's good. So we just need to get the kale ready. Kale, I love it. I love to use it in different ways. It's hardy. It's a hardy green that really holds up. If you put spinach in there, you know what spinach does. It goes to nothing. I like something with a little bit more texture. You could use curly kale if you wanted to. I pulled these from the garden just a little bit ago. I like more this Lasagna, sometimes called dinosaur kale too. It's kind of my favorite one, and it's the one I usually grow a lot of because I really like it. I'm stripping off that center stem just because it can be really, it cannot be fun to chew. So I'm instead taking it all off and just stripping it off, and then you don't have to worry about that. So I'm gonna take the rest of these leaves off, and then we'll just get ready and cook the kale. So I kind of tightly put them together, which I know sounds annoying, but it just makes it so you can cut them all in one big fellow swoop. As you can see, I'm not going too big or too small. We are gonna throw this in there. I'm gonna let it wilt down and cook with everything. So I like to have some pieces, and I like to have it not just be minuscule, fine mince. And that's why, again, I like kale too, because that texture is held. So as you can see, this mixture has cooked. The oils from the sausage have really come out and are really flavoring it. These herbs have flavored it and it smells amazing. So I'm just gonna add all the kale right on top. And we're gonna let that just wilt into it. That's what I love about kale, which you could make a warm kale salad kind of like this too, which would be delicious. But we're just gonna let it sit there and kind of wilt into it just a little bit, just a couple minutes here, and then it will cook down into it. What's also nice about kale, it doesn't have too much liquid, so we're not gonna overburn this with liquid. So I'm gonna let this cook, then you're gonna see it completely ready. So this is cooked for about 2 minutes, and as you can see, it's completely wilted and softened that kale, which that's exactly what you want because it's not gonna be then too raw and crunchy, and it will cook more in the oven too, so I'm not worried about that. At this point, the herbs, they've done their work. I'm gonna take them out and just remove them. So we have our thyme and our rosemary. Get any of the goodness off of it that could be on there. I love using herbs this way, so much easier. So now is kind of the unique sauce component, squash soup. I love to do this. One, because often, when I make squash soup, I make a lot of it and usually eat it for a week. So it's often that I'll have some around. If not, do not feel bad. You can buy a squash pasta sauce right now. I've seen so many in grocery stores. They look delicious. That would work just as well. So don't feel bad. Or if you want to go the extra mile, just make some soup too. It's kind of one of those things if you plan your menus out, which, I mean, kudos to people that do. I've always heard that, and I've had friends that do that, and I'm just like, wow. I don't do that, no. That's just a lot of planning. And then you have to make like a whole grocery list, which I know I should, but no. Instead, what I do when I get home from the grocery store is say, shoot, there were like 5 things I didn't get. So I'm stirring that around. You can see it's saucy. That's exactly what you want because we're making lasagna. So you need it to have liquid in it. Now that that is all there, I'm just gonna let that sit. It's gonna cool slightly, but then we're gonna get the cheese mixture ready, which is really easy. The cheese mixture, as you can see, is pretty simple. We're gonna start with some ricotta cheese. I love to use ricotta. Another one of those things you can always remember is if you don't have ricotta but happen to have cottage cheese, you can do that. I would maybe blitz it a few times in like a food processor, but it's doable if you have to, especially in a pinch. Growing up, that's the only way we had lasagna often was with cottage cheese. But in a couple eggs, they're just gonna help it hold together. They're gonna help it have a little bit more body as it cooks. So it's just kind of a nice thing to add in there. I'm not gonna say it's traditional, but it's nice. We're gonna just whisk that in to make sure it's incorporated. So it's all whisked together. You can see it's completely incorporated. I'm just gonna add salt and pepper at this point. Just season it up. Again, you wanna season all layers as you're cooking. If you don't, you can kind of have a flat flavor in the end. So it really just helps to kind of flavor each component. Mix that in, and then of course, some Parmesan cheese. This is cheese, again, Parmesan with squash. That is just, for me, that's where it's at. That's good. Before I mix all that in, I'm gonna add also some chopped parsley. Yes, do you really notice the flavor of parsley? I'm not gonna promise you, you always do. There is a flavor. It also just adds a nice green to it, adds a little bit more oomph. So it's not like a huge component, but let's be honest, it just looks nice. Now that's mixed together, I'm just gonna get all my components together, and then guys, we're just gonna layer up lasagna. It can be simple. We have our different components here. We have the squash and kale and sausage mixture, which seriously guys, it smells delicious. And then we have the ricotta mixture, which all I'm gonna say is different brands of ricotta can be different. If it doesn't seem like a spreadable consistency, just add a couple tablespoons of milk until it feels like you can spread it easily. It'll just make it work together easier. Then we have a little bit more squash soup or squash pasta sauce. You can do either one. I'm gonna just put that here in the bottom. That's honestly, anytime you're making any lasagna, I find it's a little bit easier to put some in the bottom of the pan. It helps with sticking. It helps so there's not noodle directly onto that surface of the bottom. And see, you just spread it out. There it is, ready to go. And then I'm using no-cook noodles. I think this can just be, it's kind of a time saver. So if you wanna make this on a weeknight, you don't have to boil a big thing of water, sit there and just be cooking them and then pull them out, which is a mess, they get sticky. So if you need to and you're in a pinch like me, just make them with this. It's delicious. I'm overlapping them slightly, which I like because it's added insurance that they're gonna have a really good base to kind of put all these layers on. And then I always take one and I break it, which I know looks like a mess, but you can just then fill in all these side pieces, and that's just gonna help it make sure that there's kind of noodle everywhere that there needs to be. And then we're gonna take the ricotta mixture and just kind of delineate it by just making a half, just kind of with your eye. You don't have to be guys exact here, that's not important. And we're gonna just slowly make little dollops of this all over. You could put half of it right into the middle of the pan, but guys, I think you'll see why and agree, that will make it a lot harder to spread out. So if you make little dollops all over, half of the work is done for you. So I'm gonna put half this mixture in there, then spread it out, and then we'll keep going with the layers. See, having it spreadable just helps. So that's all spread out. Then we're gonna do half this meat mixture. See, it's pretty simple. And it's not something that takes a lot of perfection, which is what I love about lasagna. No one's looking at the sides. No one's seeing it. What I do, this to me, I am someone that lives by the seasons. Maybe it's because I grew up on a farm. Maybe it's because I still live on a farm. I love that life, but I love to use things that are in season, and this just instantly smells and feels autumnal. I always have a lot of kale left in the garden at the end of the year, and actually when there's a freeze or two on it, a frost, it gets a little bit sweeter. So I actually like to have it left like that and use it. So we're having about half that meat mixture. I'm just gonna kind of somewhat try to evenly spread it. That's a little bit hard. And I love the color. I love the green in it. A little bit on the side. I don't like them on the side like that, because then as it cooks, guys, that burns. And that just, once you go to this work, you don't want it to look gross. So I'm spreading that out. And don't worry, some of that cheese mixture gets up in there. It doesn't matter. Then we're gonna put a little bit more just Parmesan cheese over it. We're adding that flavor, kind of gives you that awesome, delicious, funky, cheesy flavorness. I love that. And then we're just repeating the layers. So we're going with the noodles again, then the ricotta mixture, and the sausage mixture. Finish up that layering, we'll pop it in the oven. I have my final layer of meat done. I'm gonna put that final amount just of some cheese on top, because guys, you agree, you have to finish it off with some cheese on top. While I'm doing this, my sidekick is right beside me at my feet, always wanting just to make sure I'm not gonna drop anything for him. He's so good at waiting for that. It doesn't usually drop. I'm just gonna pop this into the oven. This is what I love, when you have a nice, thick, hearty lasagna. It's gonna make the house smell amazing. We're just gonna pop it right in, let it bake, and then enjoy the goodness of fall. I'm excited. You're gonna like it. This is now done. Guys, the house smells unbelievable. Just like so autumnal and delicious and hearty. So as you can see, I put some foil on it. So in the last probably like 20 minutes of baking, so it just doesn't get too dark, I put it on. I love the crusty bits of the cheese though. You want that browning because that is flavor. So I put that on just so it wouldn't get darker. Obviously we can't cut it right now, just like anything else. It's too soft, it would fall apart, it'd be way too hot. So I'm gonna let it sit like 15 minutes just so it cools off slightly. It's still gonna be hot. Then we'll cut it, because you guys need to see the inside of this. And I just need to eat some, so it's a win-win. I'm cutting this up. We're getting ready. It's been sitting a little while. It's still hot, don't worry. We're not like making it cold. I love, guys, it smells so good and I wish you could smell it, but you can make it so you can smell it. And we're just gonna pop it out. You never know when you're gonna pop a piece out. And yes, if you wonder about my old looking, when you grow up on a farm, you have so many spatulas because feed stores always give them away, or they used to anyway. And so we have so many of these, and I either got them probably from my grandma's or my mom, or still every so often you'll find. So that's the kind I always have. We're gonna pop this out. Okay, yeah, that looks good. That just, like, how does that not look delicious? You get the squash smells, you get some of that sausage. I think it just needs a little bit, just a little bit more cheese on top of the parm, just to kind of give it that good, salty, delicious kick on top. This is fun. I love the layers. I love that you get the noodle, then you get some of that kale that's mixed with the squash and the sausage, and then of course the ricotta mixture. So it hits all those lasagna notes that you want, the warm, comfort, hearty food, but also just has kind of that autumnal flair to it that, guys, it's good. It's just good. Still really hot. I might have burned the top of my mouth, but it was worth it because it's delicious. You get every note, the sweet, salty, it's just delicious together, and I can't wait for you guys to try this. Share this around. I love to see you tagging people in these, sharing these, putting these in your stories, whatever it is, and then seeing your pictures too. Always tag me. The recipes, of course, on wiseguy.com, along with tons of other recipes. So check it out, view, stay a while. I love when you just hang out on the website. I can't wait for you to make this. Let me know what you think. It's delicious.